We're not wasting any time, we're getting right to it with our monthly build for December 2023 because we're running out of time to build systems this year, and we have actually two planned. This one, of course, which is going to be a giveaway system to help promote our charity live stream December 9th, Saturday. Kyle and I will be live streaming games, entertainment, and more to help support Children's Miracle Network hospitals via Extra Life. So join us if you're available, and you might be the lucky winner of this system right here, which is based on the AMD Radeon RX 7900 XT graphics card and the Ryzen 7800 X3D CPU, the best CPU for gaming right now.
Excellent!
Today's video is brought to you by the Tower 200 series cases from Thermaltake, featuring a vertical tower design with a 90-degree rotated motherboard and two pre-installed CT140 fans. The Tower 200 can support huge GPUs, including the RTX 4090, without compromising airflow thanks to an abundance of filtered ventilation panels, and it also supports 280mm AIOs, standard size PSUs, and a sold separately 3.9-inch LCD panel kit to personalize your rig or display useful system stats. It's available in black, snow, or several unique shades of green, so for more on Thermaltake's The Tower 200 series cases, click the sponsor link in the video description. Before we go over the parts I'll be working with today, I want to say a huge thank you to AMD for providing the RX 7900 XT graphics card, as well as an RX 7700 XT graphics card. That one will also be given away during our charity live stream. We have lots of prizes lined up. And also a huge thank you to GIGABYTE for providing the motherboard for today's build. Now, with all my monthly builds, I try to pitch something that's practical for anyone who might be considering building a gaming PC at home. And the practical pitch for this system right here is that for roughly the price of an RTX 4090, which have gone up in price recently, it's really hard to find one for less than $2,000 these days, you can build this entire system. So to contrast, the build of the month for October, which was a $1,200 bang for the buck, sort of the build that I would recommend for most people right now, as well as the build of the month for November, which was a $700 PC, which is starting out with much more of a budget, going with the last generation AM4 platform. This build does feature the best of the best in at least a few categories, specifically the CPU with the 7800 X3D. This is pretty much the best CPU purely for gaming right now. We're building on the AM5 platform, which, if you look at the mainstream platforms out right now from AMD and Intel, does have the most future-proofedness for it. We are expecting at least one future generation of CPUs to launch on this platform from AMD, if not more than that. They did have really, really long lifespan and support for their AM4 platform. And we're differentiating this build by going small. We're going with a Mini-ITX build using the Cooler Master NR200P Max computer case, which includes not only the case, but also the power supply and the CPU cooler. Let's go over the rest of the parts. So once again, the CPU being the 7800 X3D, one of the best CPUs for gaming out there. Some would call it the best CPU, and that is debatable, of course. Like with many PC hardware parts, depending on how you're testing it, you can get comparable performance from some other CPUs that are out there on the market. But one of the nice things about it being an 8-core CPU versus some of the higher core count CPUs is that it's going to have a little bit more comfortable time keeping itself cool in a small form factor build. And for our motherboard for this small form factor build, we have the B650I AORUS Ultra, a B650 chipset motherboard from GIGABYTE for the AM5 sockets, the AM5 platform. Of course, with Mini-ITX motherboards, you're losing quite a bit of space by going small form factor, but they have packed a lot onto this motherboard, including a couple DIMM slots. You've even got that USB 3.2 Gen 2 front panel header, as well as a couple M.2 slots for our storage. Our storage is going to be, yet again, the Acer FA100, 2TB NVMe SSD. This one's a bargain for about $85 or $90 right now. So excellent price per gigabyte with a lot of the Gen 3 drives that are out there right now, and you're still going to get up to about 3,300 megabytes per second reads and 2,700 megabytes per second writes. For memory, for a build in this range, I'd recommend a 32 gigabyte kit, 2 by 16 gigs. You're going to want to go with DDR5, of course, since that's the standard for this platform. And there is less expensive memory out there than the Corsair Dominator Platinum RGB DDR5 kit that I have here. So you will find that that is what I have linked in the description. Now, there's nothing necessarily wrong with this kit. It's just a bit more expensive than some of the other ones that are out there. This is made for AMD, so it does have Expo settings that you can plug in to get your memory running at the right speed. And other than the capacity being 32 gigabytes, I also wanted a DDR5 6000 speed kit at least, which this one does match. And it even has quite tight timings at CL30. And then there's the case, and this is not just the case. The NR200P is available as just the case by itself, and actually that's easier to find at this point. The NR200P Max includes the case, an 850 watt 80 plus gold rated power supply, as well as an all-in-one liquid CPU cooler. And again, this is not a new case. It's been out for a while. There have been quite a few builds done in it, but I've never built in it. And when I was looking for a suitable case for a Mini-ITX build that I could also ship to someone after we give this system away, this one fit the bill and I was able to pick it up on Amazon. Nice things about this case, other than the included power supply and all-in-one liquid cooler, are its compatibility with large GPUs. And the Radeon RX 7900 XT can absolutely be a very large, sizable GPU. We're dealing with the PowerColor Hellhound version here. And this is typically among the lower priced RX 7900 XTs that are out there on the market. These have gotten down to the low $700 range. I think this one's going for about $740 or $750 right now. There have been Black Friday, Cyber Monday deals, lots of holiday pricing going on. But for a video card with a 20 gig VRAM buffer and a lot of performance, that's actually a really, really solid price. So for anyone who's looking to build a system under $2,000, the 7900 XT is totally a viable option right now if you don't want to pay NVIDIA prices, which are still really expensive. I would say consider the RTX 4080, for example, but those are still over $1,100 or $1,200. And again, the second video card is not going to be going in the build, but just showing it off because AMD sent it over as well. This will be a standalone giveaway GPU given away alongside the system that we're building today. Again, supporting our Extra Life charity live stream on Saturday, December 9th. So those are the parts we'll be building with today. Let's get this system put together. I'm going to give you guys a closer look at this motherboard because it has some pretty unique features. Mini-ITX is smaller. It's about 7 inches by 7 inches square, so space is at a premium. And in order to make this motherboard a premium motherboard, it retails for about $230 right now. They have done a lot of little things to maximize the space. So let's start off by looking at accessories. So you have some typical motherboard accessories like M.2 screws, SATA data cables, an AORUS logo badge to proudly display on your case. Wi-Fi antenna, of course, since Wi-Fi is included on this motherboard. And then you have stuff like this. Little dongles that they've included so that on the motherboard side, they can use a teeny tiny plug that's less of a standard connector for a PC, and even for adapting something as simple as a fan header. So you have two of these fan header adapters, and those plug into the teeny tiny fan header adapters on the motherboard. Saves a little bit of space there. This is just an LED extension. There are some RGB LED headers on this motherboard. They are in somewhat unique places though. Like this whole unit right here is actually a daughter board extension that sits here just above the PCI Express by 16 slot. Along the edge of this, they have connectors like a surface mounted reset switch, a 5-volt RGB header that's right there. This little plug, which is again a header for a dongle adapter, that would be this one right here. And that connects up to give you a couple USB 2.0 headers, which is very helpful if you have something like a control box for an all-in-one liquid cooler. The by 16 slot does have an extended little release catch there, so it pops up and gives you a little bit more access, since the spot you normally push down on will be pretty covered up, so that's helpful. There's that USB 3.2 Gen 2 front panel header. Unfortunately, the case does not have this connector. I do like having this connector, and it's nice to have for some cases, but not the case we're using today. Back to this daughter board right here though, there are actually two M.2 connectors here, one that's on top and one that's on the bottom. So by removing this heatsink assembly on top and the daughter board, you can connect two M.2s right there for M.2 NVMe SSDs. You have another on the back here, so that gives you 3 total. And there's also a back plate on the whole motherboard, so you do need to remove that back plate in order to access that M.2 header, but that does give you a little bit of cooling for the M.2 drive that you might tuck behind there. And then there's this slot right here, which I thought was an additional M.2 vertical connector, and it actually kind of is. This is the M.2 connector that it is for. It's not the standard M.2 connector that's keyed for like NVMe drives, as you can hopefully see right there, but this is actually another little adapter that is, I guess, somewhat proprietary to this board. An expansion daughter board that adds 4 serial ATA connectors, 2 there and 2 right angle ones right there. Another teeny tiny fan header for the other one of these little dongles. A 12-volt non-addressable RGB header for anyone who needs to connect up to one of those types of RGB devices. And lastly, this thing here, which is actually your front panel connectors, which again connects to another dongle cable that's a little bit of a breakout. So we plug that in right there for front panel connectors, and then over at the other end we have pretty standard GIGABYTE color-coded front panel connectors for power reset and all those good things. Now you can actually get by without using this expander cable here for front panel. I just broke the housing. It's disappointing. And do be careful when unplugging this, or you might break the housing like I just did, but it should still work. But as I was saying, you could leave this little dongle connector out of it because on the motherboard, they did provide a couple 2-pin headers for a power and reset button. So you could connect those up for basic functionality in terms of front panel pinouts, and then you wouldn't need to use that riser cable, or riser card, I should say. But if you do want those SATA ports or more RGB or that additional fan header, this should just slot in right there. A little push. Oop, it's crooked. There we go, that sits in place, and then there you can see how it would be when it's installed. So yeah, since this motherboard is pretty quirky and has some unique features for ITX, I thought I'd point those out to you guys. But next up, we're gonna install our CPU, our memory, and our SSD, and also get the back plate prepared so we can install the AIO that came with the NR200P Max. This piece comes off here, and then there's one here, and then here. A quick note here, I was supposed to have another one of these 2 terabyte Acer drives. I don't. It's in the mail. It should be arriving soon. For this video, I'm going to install this SSD just for the sake of completion, but I will be swapping this out before we send this to the winner. Look, Gigabyte has toolless M.2 mounts now too. Like that, and it snaps down. Nice. Next, let's take a closer look at our NR200P Max case from Cooler Master, which is not just a case, power supply, as well as our all-in-one liquid cooler, which I believe is a 280 millimeter unit on here. So you can see IO's in the back as you would expect. Motherboard's gonna be right here. It does come with a PCIe 4.0 riser cable. That lets you bring your graphics card over here for your video outs. At the top of the case, you can see the exhaust for the pre-installed 280 millimeter all-in-one liquid cooler. At the front, you have a couple USB 3.0 Type A connectors. This does not have the Type C. It would be cool if Cooler Master came out with a new version of this case that had Type C. I am very late to the party with the NR200P Max, by the way. There have been plenty of builds in this case done over the past year or two, and it's been very well received. That's part of the reason why I decided to build in this today. I wanted a case that was somewhat tried and true, and that wouldn't give me any trouble or compatibility issues. As you can see here, the side panel pops right off. It does include some mesh there behind those holes to prevent a little bit more dust filtration. Since this is the Max version of the case, it also comes with this, which is a tempered glass side panel. So you can swap that out for the mesh panel if you so desire. I'm gonna stick with the mesh panel for this build, and we'll keep this nice and pristine for the eventual winner so they can make the choice of which one they want to use. Inside, we've got a bit of packaging. We have this box of accessories.
It's packed pretty well.
And Joe just said it's packed pretty well. I agree, Joe. They've packed everything in here because they don't want stuff rattling around during shipping, and probably gonna reuse some of this packing when I pack this up to ship it to the eventual winner of this system. Since there is an all-in-one liquid cooler pre-installed in here, they don't want the pump block part of that banging around loosely in the case, so they've tucked that into this little foam part. Do note that this does not come with thermal paste pre-installed, so we will need to do that. Not too much else to show for the interior. There's the AIO radiator and the 2 fans at the top. Here's the pre-installed 850 watt, 80 plus gold rated power supply unit. A bunch of cables come pre-connected, and then I believe there's a few more expansion cables in the box. They do include some mounts at the front of the case for like 2.5-inch drives. We're not installing any of those today, so we won't need to be too concerned about that. And you do have the option to install, like, for example, a couple intake fans along the bottom of this case. We have a GPU with a 3-fan cooler that's going to be right here against that intake, so I think we'll be okay with that. I suppose to complete the look, we should also pop off the rear side panel, very similar to the other side panel. Here we can see the fan for the pre-installed power supply, as well as some of the pre-cable management work that's been done, because that's another advantage of this case and a reason why it was so popular when it first came out. Because a lot of this stuff is pre-installed, this case is actually fairly reasonably easy for first-time builders or new builders to build in, whereas Mini-ITX can often be a bit more challenging for new builders. This case makes it a lot easier. Rounding things out with the accessories, there is our PCIe Gen 4 riser cable. Here is the power cable for the power supply. Here are some SATA extensions as well as a Molex adapter. Here's some modular cables for the power supply. We have a couple Molex plugs as well as SATA for expansion drives, and those don't come pre-installed since you may or may not actually need them. And then since there's an all-in-one liquid cooler that's also integrated, we have the brackets and mounting stuff for that, as well as your more traditional case accessories such as zip ties, rubber mounting points for mechanical drives, and motherboard mounting screws. We have one last step for our motherboard preparation, and that is to make sure that we have the all-in-one liquid cooler mounting hardware set up properly. For that, we have a couple of these brackets that came in the box with the NR200P Max. This case is actually old enough that it doesn't list AM5 as compatible on the box because it came out well before AM5 was even a thing. Fortunately, AM4 and AM5 mounts are, practically speaking, identical to one another, but they have gone with this type of method. These little hook around things, I hate this. I'm gonna be perfectly honest, I hate this. So Cooler Master, whenever you do come out with the next version of the NR200P, which I have to assume you're gonna do because this one was popular enough, you'll note that I'm reinstalling these brackets here. It's become very habitual for me to remove these brackets because most coolers use the existing AM4 or AM5 backplate, which is very solid, very metal, does a great job, saves cooler manufacturers from having to include a bracket in the box, and has 4 very sturdy, secure locations to mount your cooler to. Or you can use these plastic brackets that come pre-installed. These date back to like the AM2, AM3 days, and they have 2 connection points rather than 4. And you get to do this awkward thing where like you have these kind of loose and you position it over and you have to hook this around there. And it's very wobbly and fiddly, and then you tighten it down like so. So I'm gonna do that in just a minute, and I'm sure it'll be fine, but if I'm gonna complain about something, this is a good thing to complain about. I don't like this mounting method for all-in-one coolers in particular. We're either almost done or we still have a lot of work to do. But at this point, we should just need to install the motherboard assembly into the case, plug in all the power connectors and front panel connectors, then install our graphics card, and then we'd be done. But we need to work in this small space, and I'm learning about this case as I build with it, including features like this. A single screw at the bottom of the back here, and the entire bottom can pop off like so. That also gives you access to like a drive mounting point down there at the bottom. And it also gives you access to the underneath of the power supply, and that is where all the modular cables are connected, so you can unplug and replug things if necessary, rather than having to remove the power supply, because that's kind of the point of this case and why it costs a little bit more. This was originally $350 for the case, power supply, and cooler combo. Now it seems to be going for about 400 bucks. But if you can get the whole system installed and set up without having to remove the AIO and the power supply, that's the goal. So that's what we're going to attempt right now, starting with dropping in our motherboard and taking advantage of this other access point we have down there from the bottom. Our motherboard also has a fixed I/O shield, which is becoming more and more standard, but I still appreciate it. And also our Dominator Platinum memory, look at that. It looks really nice. It actually matches the sort of black and gray aesthetic that we have going on. It is very tall though, so I'm glad we're working with an all-in-one cooler, so we don't have to worry about any clearance issues there.
You're gonna have fun screwing this little piece back there.
Back here? Ah, fuck, you're right. That's gonna be a pain in the ass. After test fitting the motherboard, we've realized that we are gonna need access to a few things. Like along this side, we have a 24-pin main power connector, a USB 3.0 front panel connector, that fan header that needs a little dongle cable that goes with it. These brackets at the top of the AM5 sockets that I'm gonna need to hook around and screw in there. So we're gonna see how much of this stuff we can plug in sort of right here. Thankfully, the AIO has pretty lengthy tubes on it, so we should be able to do that and then actually move it into the case and mount it properly, and that should hopefully give us access to all these things we need to plug in along the edge where there's really very little room to work with. So Mini-ITX builds always throw some curveballs at you, but the system is functional. It's up and running, and I did make one pretty reasonable mistake when I was putting it together, which is that I didn't realize that the two fans for the all-in-one liquid cooler have a cable that's tucked in the back. For some reason, I just assumed it was connected to the power supply by default. It's not. I had to take that and wire it up to the motherboard, which meant I was one fan header short, or at least one normal size fan header short. So I did use one of these extensions, and I kind of had to pull the motherboard out in order to reach it and plug it in. But after doing that, everything's working just fine. So I wanted to share some quick test results with you. First off, noise. This is as loud as it will ever be. It's actually running a stress test right now, so this is probably louder than it will mostly ever be. It's emanating a reasonably quiet fan noise right now, but when I first started it up and when it's not actually running a stress test, it is super quiet, so that's really nice. I did run 3D Mark TimeSpy Extreme really quickly, so there's our overall score of 10,934. Specifically the graphics score here, 12,834. That's about 400 points higher than the 7900 XT when I originally tested it, and that was with the 7900 X3D CPU. Our CPU score is around 6,000, which is about what we would expect for an 8-core processor. This system has reasonable CPU chops, but it is definitely all about the gaming. For comparison here, an RTX 4090 will get above 19,000 in this test, a 4080 will get above 14,000, and a 7900 XTX will get a little bit beyond what the RTX 4080 can do. So you can see here, with our score of just shy of 13,000, we're not too far off the 7900 XTX or the RTX 4080. At the same time, in these tests, the CPU's max temperature was 83.6, which is pretty reasonable since there is a CPU heavy test in this suite. And our graphics card got up to 61 degrees Celsius, so that's actually quite cool. Memory was also staying pretty cool, keeping below 80C. But as mentioned, I'm running a stress test right now. It's actually getting just shy of 15 minutes or so. You can see the CPU temperature rising here and then peaking at about 93 degrees, which is, for the 7000 series of CPUs, within the ballpark of what's to be expected. That is the peak temperature, and this is, again, a stress test. So these are the peak temperatures that you're going to see with this system, and definitely higher than you'd ever see with actual day-to-day usage. The GPU stress test is running too, and our GPU is getting up to a toasty 64 degrees, just 3 degrees warmer than it got in our TimeSpy test, and the memory got up to about 74 degrees. GPU hotspot was at 94. That's why they call it the hotspot. I'm going to go ahead and kill this test, and you should hear the computer quiet off pretty quickly. So the liquid temperature has to kind of slowly drop down. And now things have settled down to a nice soft whoosh. This was a pretty cool system to put together. I realized after doing the parts list that this PC is about $300 more expensive, being a Mini-ITX system, and specifically with the NR200P Max case, cooler, and power supply combo. You can go full-size ATX with the same CPU and graphics card and save yourself about $300 with this build, bringing it down to about the $1,700 price range, and you get basically the same performance that you'll see here. As you can see, the GPU does have fan stop mode, and although the PowerColor Hellhound was just barely short enough to fit in this case, thanks to the back part here that breaks out so you can actually attach it and fit all that in there. It does have some pretty cool features like a dual VBIOS switch. That's a really nice feature to have on a graphics card. And it's got another switch that I almost missed right here by the PCIe power cables, which is a 3-position switch that you can go and turn the RGB off. Some people don't like RGB. It's nice to be able to switch that off, especially if you have this in like a bedroom somewhere close to where you sleep and you want to disable that. And then the 3rd position is this sort of light blue, sort of icy blue color. What you're seeing there is off GPU lighting control or motherboard lighting control, but just one of the other sort of cool features of this graphics card. But that is all the time I have for this video, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comment section what you think of this build. If you were spending around $1,900 to $2,000 on a PC, is this the system you put together? Would you go ITX, or would you shave off a few dollars and go full-size ATX, or would you upgrade the graphics card? Also, check the description down below so you can enter to potentially win this system, because we are giving it away. You do not have to donate to our Extra Life charity fundraiser to enter the giveaway. All you have to do is visit the donation page. Of course, if you can donate, if you have the spare money to do so, it's a very good cause, and we do appreciate all the donations that come through. Thank you to AMD once again for their support in sending the CPU and graphics card for this build. Thank you to GIGABYTE for providing the motherboard, and thanks to all of you guys for watching the video. If you want to hit the thumbs up button on your way out, that's much appreciated. If you'd like to subscribe to my YouTube channel, that's a great thing to do too. If you'd like to visit my store, we have an end of the year sale going on right now. now, paulshardware.net is where you can go to buy yourself some merch. If you guys are around on Saturday the 9th, stop by. We will be live streaming and we appreciate your support. We'll see you guys all in the next video.